Chris from Prep Logic. We're continuing our videos this week on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights with the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment reads, "The right of the people to be secure in their persons shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized." Now, there's events I'm going to talk about in this video. I'm not going to talk about the entirety of those events. I'll talk about those later. And I'm not going to talk about search warrants in their entirety in this video. I'm going to do a separate video on search warrants. And talk about burdens of proof and stuff. This video is specifically about infringements on that Fourth Amendment right. Now, the first instance of infringement we see goes back again to the American Civil War, where U.S. soldiers routinely searched and seized the property of Confederate widows without a search warrant. If their argument that the Confederate citizens were in fact U.S. citizens is valid, then they should have been afforded the protections of the Constitution, and they weren't. Their rights were infringed on. Moving forward in history a little more, we see during World War I and World War II, where homes were routinely searched for contraband and propaganda that supported the enemy. Again, just because people's views are detestable doesn't mean they can't have them. They have a First Amendment right. And in this case, their right to be secure in their persons was violated when their homes were searched just because somebody didn't like that practice. That's an infringement. Going forward a little more to post-war, we see again people who believe a detestable practice, communism, being directly persecuted by a U.S. senator, having their homes, their lives, their jobs gone through and searched without any cause other than the government didn't like what they were doing. That's a problem. That's infringement. The government not liking what you do is not reason for them to search your home or your business or your job or anything else. So in that we have infringement. The 60s were a turbulent time. You've seen civil rights leaders who were routinely served questionable warrants. In some cases they were legitimate, in some cases they weren't. And in the cases they weren't, it was because they had opinions that weren't popular. Again, that is their constitutional right to believe what they want to believe, to have whatever idea they want to have, and using the fact that you don't like their exercise of free speech to use as a cause to serve a warrant, that's infringement. You're not liking what they say is not probable cause. Sorry. Now, moving forward into the 90s, we have the case of Randy Weaver. Mr. Weaver was approached by a gentleman who was an ATF informant and asked if he could sell somebody 2 sawed-off shotguns. Mr. Weaver, being a staunch believer in the Second Amendment and needing money, sold him the shotguns. The ATF contacted him and informed him that he was, you did this thing wrong. We want you to be a snitch for us. Well, Mr. Weaver told him to piss off. Consequently, Mr. Weaver was indicted for weapons violations. So when there was a possibility he was going to do what they wanted him to do, they were going to hold off prosecution. But as soon as he refused, then they felt they were going to prosecute him. Selective prosecution is infringement. In Mr. Weaver's case, though, it goes deeper. In Mr. Weaver's case, his arraignment notice specifically had the wrong date on it. Now, it's been argued it was accidental, but even then, he missed his court date, and a warrant was issued for his arrest. And a search warrant was obtained for his property. Now, here's the problem with that. The search warrant was obtained in bad cause. Whether the date was an accident, Mr. Weaver had proof of that, and he should have been issued a new trial. And any warrants that were issued subsequent to that should have been nullified. But they weren't. And what you see is the tragedy that happened at the Weavers establishment because the federal government didn't do their job and overstepped their bounds. A few months later, in Waco, Texas, at the Branch Davidian compound, again, you had a religious leader that people didn't like his views, his constitutionally protected views. Two events led to a questionable service of warrant. First, Children's Services visited the compound because they had several children there and there were allegations that Mr. Koresh was doing things wrong with kids. Children's Services visited the compound. They did an investigation. During the investigation, Mr. Koresh was asked if there were weapons on the property. Mr. Koresh took them down to the weapon storage they had, armory, that they're allowed to have under their Second Amendment right, showed them where the weapons were secured behind a locked door with locks, and the lady left. Okay? Forgive me. So moving forward, about that same time, a worker for UPS delivering packages alleges that he opened a package being delivered to the Branch Davidians and found hand grenades in it. So he informed the federal authorities. Now, the federal authorities used this as a reason to get a warrant to search the property. The problem with this is, okay, constitutional scholars have argued about this, that the box, a sealed package, gave him an expectation of, or gave the Branch Davidians an expectation of privacy. Now, UPS says they reserve the right to check any package. So, now, a civil business's right to search a package because of a dictation in their policies does not cover the legal requirements set forth by the court for probable cause. What should have happened is when this UPS driver, because we don't know that UPS driver's motives. He could have been mad that the Branch Davidians didn't give him a good tip at Christmas. He could have been mad that, I don't know, that they believed something different than what he believed. Trust me, we Southern folk, we get serious about our religion. We'll fight about it. For whatever reason, anything he said should have been construed as hearsay without proof. What should have happened is the federal authorities should have obtained a warrant to search another package to see if weapons were being shipped to the Davidians. At that point, upon confirmation of a crime, they would have had grounds for a warrant to search the property. But they didn't do that. They went from A to C. And unfortunately, D was 90 some odd people dying in a horrible massacre. Because their constitutional right was infringed on. That's a problem. What's worse is there was never any accountability for it. Yeah, there were hearings held, but there was no accountability for it. So at the end of the day, I think the Fourth Amendment is in pretty poor shape. We have to start holding our elected officials and our federal authorities accountable for their actions. We have to. Write your congresspeople, write your senators, write your representatives. Tell them you want oversight of these agencies, constant oversight. We can see going forward in this, now to our current situation in this country. U.S. Senate persons and officials at the Federal Bureau of Investigation used false evidence to get a warrant to stalk our president. A made-up dossier was used to get a warrant to stalk our president, purely for the purpose of political agenda. When our Fourth Amendment right isn't safe from our government, it might be time to look at what our Second Amendment right was for. Just saying. I don't know if we're there yet, but we're pretty darn close. If you have any questions or would like help with research on this, of course, comment in the comment section. We're happy to help you any way we can. If you like this content, smash the like button and give us a subscribe. As always, all we ask is that you're decent to each other, because we're all in this together. God bless. Are you an adult trying to live life to the fullest, but something is just missing? Maybe it's time to stop just living and start thriving. Thrive products are all natural. They offer better health, increased mobility, and more energy. If you're interested, reach out to my friend Tracy Davis at the Davis Homestead. Information in the description below. Maybe it's time to stop just living and start thriving.